You just made a choice. Maybe to keep reading, maybe to shift in your seat, scratch an itch, take a slow breath. It felt like you. It felt free. It felt like the most obvious thing in the world. But the real reason is much stranger than a simple decision. Because by the time you felt yourself decide, the decision had already been made. Not by the thinking, talking part of you that takes the credit, by something underneath. Something that moved first, in the dark, seconds before you had any idea, and then handed you the result so smoothly that you believed you had done it yourself. You did not catch the choice being made. You only caught the moment you were told about it. To understand how unsettling this is, you have to meet the experiment that started it all. In the 1980s, a scientist named Benjamin Libet at the University of California ran a study so simple it sounds like nothing. He asked people to do one small thing. Whenever they felt like it, they were to flick their wrist. No rule about when, no signal, just a free, spontaneous movement made whenever the urge struck them. While they did this, two things were measured: the electrical activity in their brain and the exact instant they consciously decided to move, which they marked by watching a fast moving dot on a clock. The result broke something. The brain started preparing the movement before the person was aware of choosing it. There was a buildup of electrical activity, a signal scientists called a readiness potential, and it appeared a fraction of a second before the conscious decision. Your brain was already loading the action while you still felt like you were making up your mind. The order was backwards. The brain moved first. The feeling of choosing came second. But a fraction of a second is easy to wave away. Maybe it was a fluke. Maybe the timing was off. So decades later, a neuroscientist named John Dylan Haynes decided to push the experiment as far as it could go. He put people inside a brain scanner and gave them a choice: press a button with the left hand or the right hand whenever they wanted. Total freedom. And he watched their brain activity to see if he could guess which hand they would pick before they knew themselves. He could. By reading the patterns in the brain, Haynes and his team could predict the decision up to 7, sometimes 10 seconds before the person felt they had chosen. 10 seconds. Long enough that the outcome was sitting in the brain, readable, decided, while the person still believed the choice was wide open in front of them. Think about what that means. A scientist looking at your brain could know what you were going to do before you did. The verdict was already written. And then, several seconds later, the feeling arrived, dressed up as a fresh, free, spontaneous choice that you were making right now, in the moment, all on your own. You were not making it, you were receiving it. Pause on how ordinary this is. Not a rare event, not a trick that only works on buttons in a laboratory. This is the basic shape of every choice you have ever felt yourself make. The brain assembles the decision in the dark, finishes it, and only then lets a small spotlight of awareness fall on the result, just in time for you to feel like you turned the light on yourself. The conscious you is not in the engine room. The conscious you is the announcement, read out over the speakers after the work is done. And it goes deeper still. A researcher named Itzhak Fried did something even more direct. He worked with patients who had electrodes placed inside their brains for medical reasons, which let him listen to individual neurons, one cell at a time. He watched those single neurons fire as people decided to move, and he found that specific cells were ramping up their activity a full second or more before the person reported any conscious intention. He could watch the decision build, neuron by neuron, like a wave gathering, before the person inside that brain felt a thing. So who, exactly, is making your choices? This is where you have to confront something uncomfortable about the voice in your head. The part of you that feels like the captain. The one narrating your life, saying, I will do this, I have decided that, I am in control. A psychologist named Daniel Wegner spent his career studying that feeling, and he came to a startling conclusion. The feeling of consciously willing an action, he argued, is not the cause of the action at all. It is a story your brain tells you afterward. Wegner called it the illusion of conscious will. Here is how he thought it works. Your brain produces an action and, separately, produces the thought of doing it. And because the thought tends to arrive just before the movement, you stitch them together. You assume the thought caused the action. You feel authorship. But the authorship is an interpretation, added on top, a narrator taking credit for a story it did not write. Imagine sitting in a car with a fake steering wheel. The car turns left, and at the same moment, you turn the wheel left. Turn after turn, it always matches. You would swear you were driving. You would feel every ounce of control. But the wheel is connected to nothing. The car is steering itself, and your hands are simply moving along with it, a heartbeat behind, certain the whole time that you are the one in charge. That, Wegner suggested, may be much closer to what you are, not the driver, the passenger who feels like the driver. And notice how good the illusion has to be. It cannot ever slip. If you felt even once the gap between the brain deciding and the story arriving, the whole sense of being a self would crack open. So the brain closes the gap for you. It backdates the feeling of choosing to line up with the action, so the two seem to happen together, so the sequence feels seamless. You never experience the delay. You experience a single, smooth moment of, I am doing this, stitched together from two events that did not actually happen at the same time. The seam is hidden on purpose. A mind that could see its own machinery working would struggle to act at all. And this is not just one strange theory. A neuroscientist named Robert Sapolsky has spent decades arguing that when you trace any decision backward, you never find a free, uncaused you at the center of it. You find causes? The state of your brain in this second was caused by the state of your brain a second before, shaped by the hormones in your blood that morning, shaped by how you slept, shaped by the years that built your brain, shaped by the genes you never picked and the world you were born into and never chose. Every choice rests on a choice you did not make, all the way down. So where does that leave the thing you call willpower? The sense that you could have done otherwise? Sapolsky's answer is bracing. He says that feeling is real as a feeling, but it does not point at anything real in the world. There is no separate you, floating above your own biology, reaching in to make a choice from nowhere. There is only the biology, doing what biology does. And a narrator who shows up a moment later to say, I meant to do that. Now sit with how far this reaches. Everything you have done today was preceded by activity you never saw. The decision to get up, the words you chose in a conversation, arriving in your mouth a half second before you knew you would say them, what you wanted for lunch, the thought that just crossed your mind. The urge to agree or disagree with this very sentence rose up out of machinery you cannot feel, decided itself, and only then became a thought you could call your own. You experience your life as a series of decisions you are making. It may be closer to a series of decisions you are discovering, watching them surface, one after another, like names you did not know you remembered. The next thought you have, you will not choose. It will simply appear, already formed, and you will call it yours. Try it. Try to predict the very next word your own mind will offer you. You cannot. It arrives from somewhere you have no access to, and only after it lands do you feel like its author. The thoughts think themselves, and then you sign your name to them. This is the part that stops people cold. Because it does not feel that way. It will never feel that way. The illusion is not a thin disguise you can see through with effort. It is total. The narrator is seamless. You will go on feeling, every second of every day, like the author of your actions, even now, even knowing this, because the feeling of authorship is built into the machine and cannot be switched off. But here is the strange comfort hidden inside it. If your choices were never made by a separate, floating self, then the harshest voice you carry has been blaming the wrong thing all along. The cruelty you turn on yourself for what you did, the certainty that you could simply have chosen better in that moment, rests on a self that the science cannot find. You were always your biology and your history, doing the only thing they could do in that instant, with the brain you had at the time. That does not make you helpless. The machine still learns. It still changes with every new experience, every word it hears, including these. You are not outside the chain of cause and effect pulling levers. You are part of it, being shaped right now by what you are taking in. Which means this idea, landing in your brain in this moment, becomes one more cause that quietly bends what you do next. So you do not lose anything you actually had, you only lose a story about who was in charge. You just made a choice. And now you know that the choice was already moving through you before you arrived to claim it. There was no captain. There was only a current, ancient and unbroken, and a voice a half second behind it, certain, as it always is, that it had decided everything itself.